Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. There was a viewer that asked me over the weekend, Zach, if you were going to take the 8 teams that all won their division last year, so in the AFC, Houston, Kansas City, New England, and Baltimore, along with the 4 teams that won their division last year in the NFC, like San Francisco, New Orleans, Philadelphia, and Green Bay. So out of those 8 teams, who do you guys think is the most likely to not repeat and win their division next season? And I think when I look at these 8 teams, there are many different answers that you could come up with. So I want to break it down with you guys. We'll start off with the AFC South and the Houston Texans. And right now, according to Vegas, out of every team on the board, they think that the Houston Texans are the least likely to repeat as division champs, and they give that odds at plus 280. So if you were going to risk $100, you would win $280. And I think when you look at this Houston Texan team for this upcoming season, there are a lot of possible narratives that can come out. Bill O'Brien, DeAndre Hopkins, and Deshaun Watson. Those 3, obviously DeAndre Hopkins is no longer in the city of Houston, but it's really those 3 guys that are going to come to scrutiny when you look at this Texan team. Bill O'Brien obviously traded DeAndre Hopkins, and people in Houston are kind of questionable about the possible relationship between Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson, and they're really wondering if they could really be able to salvage that relationship. You also look at their division in the AFC South. Tennessee was 1 win away from the Super Bowl last year and had a lead in the AFC Championship game over the Kansas City Chiefs. Indianapolis has a very good offensive line, a very good defense. They have Phillip Rivers at quarterback. And I think when you look at this Houston Texan team, if I was a Texan fan, right, the one thing I'd be very nervous about is my quarterback by himself going to be enough to win games? Because we all know Bill O'Brien isn't really a great GM, isn't really a great coach. I mean, he's fine as a coach. He's gotten the Texans to the playoffs over the last couple seasons, but without DeAndre Hopkins and just a really bad offensive line, I'm not a very big fan of Houston's offensive line at all. I actually agree with Vegas to think that they are the most likely team that won their division last year to not win their division this year. I actually agree with that. I agree with Vegas in that sense, and I think it's really, if Deshaun Watson doesn't do everything he can for the Houston Texans and they don't win the division, I wouldn't be shocked. Moving on to the next team, we'll go to the NFC. How about the San Francisco 49ers? They're currently even to win their division and a slight favorite over Seattle. I think I would agree with these odds as well. I would be pretty surprised if a team not named San Francisco or Seattle ended up winning the 2020 NFC West. I think Arizona is a possible playoff team. I think they're going to be better. I think you're going to see Kyler Murray take a really big jump in year 2 with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not that high on the LA Rams. However, they still have talent, and they're still going to be able to win some games. And that really puts you to the battle of Seattle and San Francisco. And last year, the Seattle Seahawks were 1 yard away from winning the NFC West. And I think if they would have won that NFC West, the playoffs could have just gone down in a whole new circle. But at the same time, San Francisco, the fact that they're even isn't really a detriment to them. I think it's more of a compliment to Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks and how their home field advantage is usually so good. So I do agree with that right now. I would give San Francisco the slight edge over Seattle, but it really is 50-50. Both those teams are super talented, and you're asking yourself, who would you rather have, the best quarterback or the best defense in the equation? Okay, moving on to the next team on the board. This is the team that Vegas thinks is the most likely to repeat as division champs, and that would be Patrick Mahomes and his Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC West. And I think when you look at this number at minus 400 for the Chiefs to win the AFC West, so that would mean if you want to win 800, you would have to risk 400. And even though that does sound like a lot, I do think it is the right number, because even though the Denver Broncos have really improved, and I think they're a possible playoff team for this upcoming season, and the Chargers have a boatload of talent, and the Raiders were much better than anyone could have ever expected last season, I still do think the Kansas City Chiefs are the clear favorite in the AFC West. When you look at their quarterback, when you look at their skill position players, when you look at their coach, and you just look at the fact that this team is dominant, and this team last year really proved a lot of people wrong when they were really showing the ability to just come back from any deficit and still find some way to win. You hope their defense could just stay improved and could keep on playing as well as they did last year and keep making the amount of big plays and timely plays that they did last year. But when you look at the AFC West, I'm going to ask you guys this. Besides the Kansas City Chiefs, which team has the best quarterback situation in the AFC West? When you look at the Raiders, I think we could both agree that Derek Carr nor Marcus Mariota is the future answer at quarterback, and John Gruden is going to eventually, sooner rather than later, find a quarterback in the draft. The Chargers, yeah, I understand they just took Justin Herbert, but at the same time, you don't really know if he's definitely the answer. He didn't play great in big games in college and sometimes even faded in the second half of games. And then Denver. Drew Lock went 4-1 last year, and John Elway has done a really nice job surrounding him with the best weapons as he possibly could. But at the same time, what happens if Denver and Drew Lock doesn't succeed this year? Let's say the season is an absolute all-out disaster, and we know the history that John Elway has of developing quarterbacks, and it usually isn't good. So Kansas City right now by far and away is the favorite in the AFC West. I would be pretty surprised if they don't win the division. So I think Kansas City, I will agree with Vegas, is the most likely team that won their division last year that's going to win their division again this year. Moving on to the NFC South, and we have the defending South champion New Orleans Saints as a -105 favorite to win their division. And the really two main competitors here are New Orleans and Tampa Bay. There are going to be plenty of people that pick Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to win their division, over the Saints. And I think this is really 50-50, man. I think the Buccaneers and the Saints are on an even playing field, and I understand you tend to give the Saints the slight early advantage due to the fact that they have history of playing together, and there's going to be really no sense of Drew Brees having to, adjust to a change of scenery like Tom Brady is going to have to do in Tampa Bay. But I think there is definitely a shot that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers end up winning the NFC South. I think New Orleans, as good as they are and as talented as they are, they could maybe take a step back, and maybe their older age could show. Tampa Bay, even though they have the older quarterback, when you look at their roster 1-53, I think is the younger and is the more explosive team when you look at their weapons. I understand the Saints have Michael Thomas, they have Alvin Kamara, and they did decide to bring in Emmanuel Sanders, but Evans and Gronk and Godwin and Brate and Howard and hopefully Ronald Jones takes a step forward at running back. And, you have Tom Brady and Bruce Arians as your quarterback coach combination. I think New Orleans and Tampa Bay right now are basically 50-50 in terms of who is most likely to win the NFC South. I think New Orleans' pedigree is very good, and obviously you give them the advantage there over Tampa Bay. But at the same time, it is really, really hard to win your division 4 straight years in a row. And if New Orleans does win the NFC South this year, that's what they will be achieving. And it's going to be very interesting to see what goes down. I think Drew Brees is getting a little older. I think you've seen over the last couple of years, especially towards the back end of seasons, his game decline a little bit. But we'll see what happens. At the same time, Sean Payton is a very good coach. He's an established coach. And New Orleans, more than any team, is under a lot of pressure in order to get back to the Super Bowl. So you would think that if that's the case, they'd have to win their division at -105. Okay, so I actually started off the show talking about the Houston Texans and how Vegas thought that they are the most likely team that won their division last year that is most likely not to win it this year. And I was a little surprised by that because the way a lot of people in the media are talking about it, you would think that that team would be the New England Patriots. And personally, do I think the New England Patriots are going to be awful this year and have some huge shot to lose their division? No, I think right now the Patriots are definitely a logical pick to win the AFC East. But I do feel like at the same time, most people are on the Buffalo Bills bandwagon. And when you compare the two sides, it's obvious why. Buffalo is a younger team and really came up last year. And you would hopefully think, if you're a Bills fan, Josh Allen is only going to get better. This defense has another year and is more experienced playing with each other. And they bring in Stephon Diggs. There is no reason why the New England Patriots should win the AFC East over the Buffalo Bills. But at the same time, I'm having a difficulty letting Bill Belichick and forgetting about Bill Belichick that easily. I think when you look at New England and Buffalo, it's a two-team race, man. Like, either of those teams could win the division. I still believe in New England's defense. I totally understand that they lost a lot in Van Noy. And a bunch of other pieces, but at the same, Danny Sheldon up front, but at the same time, I still believe in Bill Belichick. I still believe in this New England Patriot team. And I also think, for everyone saying what they're saying about Jarrett Stidham, and I get it, he obviously isn't going to be Tom Brady, but I have a hard time thinking that Bill Belichick wouldn't have gone with this kid if he didn't think it was the real deal. It couldn't have been that big of a surprise to Bill Belichick that Tom Brady left, that all of a sudden his only plan is to get Jarrett Stidham. He clearly believes in him, and I just don't really trust Josh Allen to develop and become the best quarterback, in the division, like a lot of other people are saying. So I actually think New England can definitely win the AFC East. I'm not saying I agree with Vegas giving them their number at plus 125. I think I would give it at like maybe plus 150 and maybe put Buffalo at like minus 150 because that's the consensus. That is really the team that everyone is picking to win the AFC East. Buffalo, and I'm actually going to look at Vegas's number for them right now. And they actually have Buffalo at plus 120 as well, so both those teams are on pretty even playing fields. I think it's going to come down to what quarterback is going to be able to make the most plays along with coaching and defense, and even though most people do expect that to be Buffalo, I actually think New England does have a pretty good shot to win the 2020 AFC East. All right, moving on to the next team on the board. That would be the NFC East and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I feel like this is another team where there are a lot of people that are going to answer this question of who is the division winner last year that is most likely to not win the division again this year. I feel like people are going to answer the Philadelphia Eagles a decent amount to that question. But at the same time, I'm not. I think the Eagles right now are the best team in the NFC East. And when you look at rosters 1 to 53, I totally understand why some people are going to take the Dallas Cowboys as the best team in the NFC East. And I get it. They add CeeDee Lamb to a dynamic offense. Most people last year around Dallas think that Jason Garrett was the problem. But at the same time, I'm just taking the better quarterback and the better coach in the division, and that's Philadelphia. And Mike McCarthy, I understand he's a Super Bowl winning coach in Green Bay, but I really do believe deep down, if the Green Bay Packers had a different coach, they would have more than one Super Bowl during Aaron Rodgers' time there. I really do believe that. And I just don't think Mike McCarthy is going to be the coach that just comes in and all of a sudden turns things around in Dallas, because the bottom line is things haven't been running smoothly in Dallas for a while. And I feel like Jerry Jones always just finds a way to get himself into the drama, into wherever the drama situation is, and I don't buy it and I don't trust it. Last year, there was no reason why the Dallas Cowboys didn't win the NFC East. There was no reason why they shouldn't have gone into Philly and have beaten the Eagles when Carson Wentz was playing with Greg Ward as his number one receiver. And now that Philadelphia's targets are healthy, now that Dallas Goedert has another season under his belt, I think Philadelphia should be the favorite in the NFC East. And right now they're at plus 120. I think that number is just about spot on. Moving on to the AFC North champion Baltimore Ravens, right now they're sitting at minus 200, and I think out of any team in the AFC, they're probably the second most likely to win their division for the second year in a row. It is a tough division. I totally understand that when you look at Pittsburgh and their talent on defense, don't get me wrong. I'm actually higher on the Pittsburgh Steelers than most, but at the same time, you have Cleveland in there, very talented, but I'm not going to pick them to win the division. Baltimore, their coaching and their quarterback and their defense, they should win this division. Right now, Vegas puts them at minus 200, so obviously not as big a favorite as, the Kansas City Chiefs, but at the same time, I think that number is just about right. I wouldn't be shocked if Pittsburgh ends up winning the North, but Baltimore should be the favorite, and after what they did last year, there's no denying that. And Lamar Jackson, could he maybe take a step back and maybe not have as good of a pure overall season as he did last year? Absolutely. But I'm not going to put Baltimore at the top of the list in terms of teams that won their division last year that are most likely not to win it again this year. And then Green Bay, right now, their number to win the NFC North is plus 150. And I feel like this is going to be another team that a lot of people pick to win their division due to the fact that everything that went down with Jordan Love, and I totally understand that their GM should be under scrutiny for the fact that he didn't supply Aaron Rodgers with a weapon, and Minnesota's very good. Both those teams are pretty even. It was really a coin flip in terms of who would have won the division last year. When you look at Chicago's defense, they're very good. Detroit and Matt Patricia needs to win right now. But I think my early pick for the 2020 NFC North would actually be the Green Bay Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers this upcoming season is going to have one of the better seasons he had in a while. I think there's a very good chance that you see Aaron Rodgers out here playing motivated, and I actually like the Packers defense. I understand that the last time we saw them on the field, they were getting run all over by the San Francisco 49ers, but I actually think the Packers and Eagles are two teams in the NFC that are more likely to win their division than San Francisco and New Orleans, just because when you look at pure talent and when you look at who else is in their division. And I understand Dallas and Minnesota are both equally tough competitors to teams like Seattle and to teams like Tampa Bay. But at the same time, I just don't really see how I could pick Dallas and Minnesota to win over teams like Philly and Green Bay because I just don't buy them and I can't trust those other teams. In the AFC, I think it's pretty evident Kansas City and Baltimore will win their division. Maybe Pittsburgh does. But I think when you look at my answer to this question, right? Who is the most likely team that won their division in 2019 that won't win their division again in 2020? I think my answer would have to be the Houston Texans. And I'm going to agree with Vegas because I think there are three teams, the Texans, the Colts, and the Titans, that all have pretty even odds of winning the AFC South. Kansas City obviously is not your answer. I think New England is likely, but at the same time, I just trust Bill Belichick, and I'm not going to say all of a sudden that I am very confident in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, a team that hasn't won their division in a very long time winning their division. It's not Baltimore, it's not Green Bay, it's not Philly. New Orleans, I seem to trust them, and I'm not going to answer them because if they don't win the division, if they don't make the playoffs, the season is obviously going to be considered a failure. And San Francisco, same thing, but I just trust their defense. And yeah, Seattle could win the division, but 50-50, the odds of San Francisco winning at 50-50 are greater than Houston winning at 33 across the board. Because once again, I wouldn't be shocked if Houston, Indy, or Tennessee ends up winning the AFC South. So I think my answer to that question would be the Houston Texans are the most likely team that won their division last year not to make the playoffs and not to win the division this year. In the AFC and overall, and in the NFC, I think my answer would probably be San Francisco. And even though they made it to the Super Bowl last year, everything went right for the Niners, and I think there's a very good chance Seattle could have their best regular season in a while and end up winning the division. So I'm going to ask you guys, who do you guys think is the most likely team that won their division last year that doesn't win it this year? You guys know what to do. Social media, ZAC_KRULL on Instagram, Twitter at ZKRULL3, and YouTube at ZACKRULL. Let me know, who do you guys think is the answer to that question?